Let's imagine a world where Five Nights at Freddy's stuck to their guns and didn't head down the unfortunate path that we have today. What if they stayed true to their point-and-click survival horror roots and kept with the core mechanics of the game that had once separated itself from the masses, expediting its notoriety? No Fazgoo, no fetch quests, none of whatever this is. The return to Bloody Nights is genuinely one of, if not the best FNAF fan game, period. It captures literally everything a Five Nights at Freddy's game should be. Now, I must apologize to the developer for outright ignoring the disclaimer that appears when you boot up the game. We want you to understand that we are just very young people who made this game out of passion, so it still may not be perfect or any better than other FNAF fan games around. Honestly, the return to Bloody Nights is the most fun I've ever had with any mainstream or fan-made FNAF title. It feels the most authentic. It gives the fandom what we want, something that we have been asking for since the second game. And you can practically see the passion and love for this community oozing out of every nook and cranny. So buckle up, you're in for a doozy. See, you're such a fucking tease. You are a bitch. Fuck you. God! The return to Bloody Nights takes place in none other than Fredbear's family diner. That's right, Fredbear's family diner. I had to say that twice because I don't know about all of you, but I've been fucking dying to have a game set here since I heard about it in Matthew Pathew's second ever FNAF theory. That was 2014, and we still have yet to have an official game set in the diner, and no, FNAF 4 does not count. So this is probably the closest we're ever gonna get. And yes, I am aware that heaps of other FNAF fan games have been set in Fredbear's family diner, but I don't believe that any of them have executed it as well as this game. Though, that also just goes to show how badly people have wanted something like this. Monday. Monday night is what you'd expect from a night one. It's pretty fucking easy. Threats are low, but it gives you a lay of the land. And more importantly, it gives you a night to just appreciate the scenery of this place. And whilst we do so, we get to listen to some recording tapes introducing us to the job. In our office, dead ahead, is a camera monitor surrounded by a ton of fun little bits and bobs. The monitor can switch between 9 different locations of the diner, obviously to keep track of the animatronics once they start moving around. To our right is a door with a big red button, and slouched over outside it is an endoskeleton, though it doesn't seem to do anything. And closing the door reveals an image of Spring Bonnie here to say hello. To our left is another door. It's the same thing, but this one's dedicated to Fredbear. There's a hall out this door with a bunch of little things, but nothing really worthy of note. And then there's behind us. This is easily the coolest place in the entire restaurant. Just look at it. The shelves are loaded with references, and its centerpiece is a big gift below a poster of some clown-looking motherfucker. In any case, as this is night one, or Monday, our only real threat is Spring Bonnie, but that doesn't mean they're not gonna pull some bullshit to subtly scare the hell out of you. During this night, you just have to get used to things and figure everything out. Check your cameras, there the golden animatronics are on the stage, and follow Spring Bonnie around. Luckily for you, nothing else is going to do anything. But that cunt just moved. Absolutely nothing else will move. Why is that thing standing up? Why are you doing this? When Spring Bonnie disappears from the hall, he's next to your office, and if you shine your light on him, slam that door closed, and when you hear that knock, you're safe. Just don't keep your door closed for too long, because it'll overheat the generator, and you'll be fucked. But more on that later. Monday night really gets you into the groove. It teaches you all the basic mechanics, And with those little fucking Easter eggs, they clue the player in on what could be potential gameplay mechanics of later nights. Or at least just make them paranoid as fuck. Tuesday. Tuesday night is very simple. The title card shows that our good pal Fredbear has just been added to the mix, and nothing else. What are you doing here? What do you do? What do you want from me? Yeah, he does nothing, but it's a cool Easter egg. Because this game clearly takes heaps of inspiration from FNAF 1, I assumed Fredbear worked the same as Freddy. So I would slam close that door when he was smooching my camera, as to prevent him from sneaking in. It worked. Wednesday. Wednesday is when shit gets real. The title card suggests that the new addition to the night is this other Bonnie suit. That's a fucking load of shit. Whilst not as clearly as Bon Bon, all these fuckers in the back are visible. So Wednesday night introduces 4 new animatronics to the roster. Spring Bonnie 2.0, who I referred to as Peekaboo throughout this playthrough, seems like he should be the star of this night. But no. No, he isn't. This cunt shows up at around 3 AM, but didn't leave his room until late into 5, so I didn't have to deal with him at all. At 2 AM, the security puppet shows up behind you. Flash it away. Pretty simple. Very simple, actually. I never got jumped by it. I did die because of this motherfucker, however. Fredbear 2.0, otherwise known as Suit, to me. This guy showed up at around 3 AM, and I had no clue how to deal with him. I slammed shut my door and it stayed shut, hoping it would make him go away. It didn't. And when Bonnie showed up on the other side of the room, I overheated the generator and was a sitting duck. I beat it on my second attempt. Once again, he showed up at around 3, and I had no clue what to do about him. But this time, I knew the doors wouldn't be much help, and flashing him didn't seem to do anything either. So I studied him, and by the end of the night, I figured out how he works. Suit just chills next to your office, and you only need to close the door on him when he gets super close. Though on this night, he only completed his cycle once. The final animatronic introduced on this night is the Cupcake. All it does is photobomb one of the security cameras every once in a while. Not really a problem. I love this night. It subverts expectations and teases all of the other animatronics without overwhelming the player, as the new animatronics are barely threats as of now. Thursday. Now that all our players are on the field, the game can focus on increasing the difficulty and force the players to conjure up a method to this madness. Everything moves faster, all the animatronics are active super early on, and everyone completes their cycles a bunch of times. I even died a couple of times this night. So, we can finally have a proper look at Peekaboo. He starts off in the parts and service room, and will promptly make his way through Bonnie's hall. He'll get right up in that camera's grill, covering his eyes, and when he brings down his hands, he'll sprint to your office. Peekaboo! Though if you can catch it in time, slam close that door, and he'll start a knocking.
I am the one who knocks.
Open the door and he'll get you anyway. Luckily, we have this death screen to help us know why. Knocking at the door, waiting for you to greet, but be patient before opening, or you'll meet defeat. It makes sense. Of course he's gonna wait for a response if he knocks at your door. And now you know, so just wait a bit after he knocks. All of the animatronics that can kill you have these death screens. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are pretty straightforward, so their screens aren't the most helpful, but it does confirm Suit's mechanics. Close the door, but don't be too hasty. He's got some time, so don't be too crazy. So go about your night and get a rhythm going. It's difficult, but very doable. Friday. Friday night is the conclusion of the main story. It puts everything that you've learned thus far to the test. I've seen people argue that it is way too hard. I'd argue that you're all a bunch of fucking babies. But I understand your pain. I died on this night. I died a lot. It made me angry. It made me very fucking angry. I had my method down pat. I'd say it out loud as I went through the rounds. Check the hall for Freddy. Check the hall for Bonnie and Peekaboo. Check the left door for Suit. Check the right door for the Endo. Oh, yeah. He's a player now. Randomly, he'll stand up like before, and you gotta close the door on him. Though it's very rare that he'll actually move, so it's basically an RNG element. And then look behind for the puppet. Repeat. It got to a point where I'd virtually never die to Fredbear, Bonnie, Peekaboo, and certainly never to the puppet. My issue was the suit. That fucking suit. I'd slam that door in his face when he crouched down next to me. I'd fucking die otherwise, right? Well, because of that, I had to spend a lot of the night with my left door shut, and as you can imagine, that made my generator bust many a times. I was so frustrated because I felt like my gameplay loop was pretty fucking good, but my run would inevitably end in loss because of bad RNG. So yeah, very mad. But I could see myself beating it. Eventually, after an hour, the stars aligned and I prevailed, completing the main story. Saturday. Everybody knows that there is never just 5 nights at Freddy's. There's always the weekend. Saturday is Friday on crack. If you thought that Friday was hard, then you'd be right. I was actually less frustrated on payday. On Saturday night, all the animatronics moved through their cycles at crazy speeds, which meant that Suit would also get the fuck away from my door faster than before. But it still wasn't enough. Nowhere near enough. Monday through Friday was all about learning how everything operated and working on a method that works. Saturday forces you to experiment to make sure everything was perfected. First thing I had to do to conserve generator heat was test out Fredbear. Up till now, I'd shut my door whenever he was staring me down in the camera, in fear that he would sneak into my office. Turns out, he actually works the exact same as Bonnie, so I could actually slam that big red button when he disappeared from the cameras. That's a bunch of heat preserved, but it wasn't enough. I had to tackle the problem with the suit. Close the door, but don't be too hasty. He's got some time, so don't be too crazy. I'd been shutting Suit out when he was right at the door, like any sane person would. Turns out, I was crazy, and had a decent portion of time before he would jump scare. So, as long as I could guesstimate when a good time to close the door was, it'd be possible. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's still hard. Mess up once and you could die. But after a couple hours of slamming my head against my desk, it hit 6 a.m. Sunday. Sunday night is our custom night. There are a couple preset difficulties in which Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, Peekaboo, and Suit are adjusted, but no one gives a fuck about any of those. 420 mode is the real Sunday night, and if I'm being honest, I never beat it. Could I have beat it? Probably, yeah. I made it to 5 a.m. on my first attempt, but I just wasn't asked. I tried the night like 5 times, and that was enough for me. Other than that, there are also a couple of game modes that look and sound miserable, some of which are also compatible with custom night. No sound is what it sounds like, and so is endless. Growing starts off the night easy, and it gets harder and harder as the night goes on. Real time looks like absolute torture. Puppet Master makes the security puppet multiply the difficulty every time you get caught by it. And a low budget makes your generator heat up faster, but also cool down faster. I didn't really care for any of these, but if someone had the dedication to play real time and sit through 6 hours of 420 mode, touch some fucking grass. But also, I commend you. You poor fucking soul. Now, I can finally talk about the story. Honestly, the story is nothing special. It's a prequel to the Five Nights games, and just kinda rehashes the lore of the main games. Before every night, we listen in on a phone call between Big Willie A and Henry Emily. It appears as though the co-owners of Fredbear's have split ways, and are working towards their own endeavors. Henry with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and William working towards opening his own establishment. Towards the start, their relationship is still friendly and healthy, but as William's life goes through a downward spiral, he becomes jealous and bitter, resenting Henry's perfect life. We discover that William is going through a divorce, which is the first step, but then he opens up his restaurant, Circus Baby's Pizza World. And, as we all know, Elizabeth gets done scooped. Henry tries to comfort his old friend, but William lashes out and that's where it ends. This story concludes after beating Friday night. In William's monologue, he laments Elizabeth's death and admits to killing Charlie. He also meticulously planted evidence to frame Henry for the missing children's incident. The scene ends with Baby coming into shot, and as the credits roll, we see multiple missing flyers. After Saturday night, the spirit of Charlie refuses to rest and takes the other spirits under her wing, working tirelessly to give them their happiest day. After beating Custom Night, we see a cutscene of William getting springtrapped, and after taking a crack at all the game modes, a cutscene plays with Springtrap getting found for Fazbear's Fright. Other than that, after beating each night from Monday to Thursday, we check out all the suits for EMF, which didn't really lead anywhere. The other story that takes place is through the tape recorder on our desk. This game's phone guy, Waffle Brogy, the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment.
Hello there, I'm Waffle Brogy, the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment, and welcome to Fredbear's Family Diner.
If I'm being honest, the tape recordings are a whole lot of nothing. Night 1 is your basic introduction. Night 2 explains the spring lock suits. Night 3 talks about an animatronic made by Henry that's been locked up in your office, that being the security puppet. But Night 4 is the important tape. It starts off very basic and subtly introduces the new suits, specifically the hide and seek function of the new spring Bonnie. But then, Waffle brings up something interesting.
Oh, by the way, I'm glad you participated in this morning's voice recording session for the tapes. You sounded fantastic. Who knows, maybe I'll need you again for any updates.
So it looks like we're playing as Phone Guy, which is awesome. I always felt that Phone Guy should have played a bigger role in the franchise. I mean, he's been there since day one. But then our call is interrupted by one of Waffle's staff, who hands him a document.
A notice document about the closure of all our restaurants due to investigations regarding one of the founders being convicted of a crime, including Fredbear's Family Diner. That's outrageous!
Looks like William's framing of Henry was successful, which ties back to the news clippings of FNAF 1, which claim that one of the founders was incarcerated. And then later he introduces the new Fredbear's voice box system. Night 5, Waffle tells us to keep an eye on things. We can't have anything go wrong. All the restaurants are closed, and they're investigating the disappearance of around 6 children. Night 6, Waffle Brogy has bad news. Something went wrong with one of the spring lock suits in another restaurant. Probably the Bite of 83, so they're scrapping all the spring lock suits. Though tomorrow morning, Waffle wants us to record some new instruction tapes. And there's no recording for Night 7. That's about it for the story. Again, it's nothing special. It just rehashes the franchise's lore, but it is interesting to listen to nonetheless. And it's fun trying to piece together where in the timeline it all fits. The last thing I want to go over is all the Easter eggs and references littered throughout this game. This office is filled with FNAF memorabilia. On your desk in the fax machine is one of the missing children's incident news clippings from FNAF 1, and above the monitor is a certificate of completion. Clearly, a nod to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. And behind you are shelves full of shit. Some notable items are a Bonzo plush from Baddington's Harmony and Horror. There's fucking Sonic, which is a nod to the Five Nights at Sonic games. There's Cuphead for some reason. And probably a ton more that I'm not aware of. And then there's also Waffle Brogy, who references a couple stories from the Fazbear Frights books in his calls.
We don't want a repeat of that old tale where a puppet crept into a sleeping man's mouth, do we now? I mean, I was taking a stroll around here earlier and saw some kids jumping into the ball pit and having a blast. They even even pretended it was a time machine. Kids these days. I had this weird dream where I was half robot, half human, and let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. My legs were replaced with rusty old scrap metal, and I was clunking around like some kind of junkyard Frankenstein.
Anyways, there's also this remote thingo. I knew that there was a secret hidden within it. It was just a matter of finding the correct combination. I tried every single series of numbers I could think of. Every important date in the franchise. Any series of numbers that I saw at any point in the game. But nothing. Not a single combination worked. But then, a Markiplier makes a video. And of course his Markiplier luck kicks in. And he manages to find the Easter egg that provided the code. An Easter egg that I didn't come across once in my playthrough. But now I know it. Entering 023956 into the remote activates an 8-bit minigame because it's not FNAF unless you got one of those. The controls to this game are actually pretty fun. It's a basic platformer with jump and slide mechanics. You have 3 lives. Only problem is that it is unreasonably hard. At the end of level 1 is this jump. How do you get past it? Jump, slide, and pray. You just have to go for it and hope that this happens. If you're lucky, you might get that to happen once every 15 minutes, and then it takes you to level 2. And if you lose all lives on level 2, it takes you right back to the fucking start. I spent 2.5 hours trying to beat this fucking minigame, and after all that, I still only made it to level 2 a handful of times before throwing in the towel. So, if you wanted to know what happens when you beat the minigame, too bad, because I fucking suck. I wish I never found out the code to access this minigame. It is my one gripe, my one proper criticism. The Return to Bloody Nights is an absolutely fucking phenomenal fan game. It captures everything Five Nights at Freddy's should be. The community has been asking for a mainline Fredbear's game for almost a decade. But even if they make one, I don't think it could top this. The visuals are amazing. The soundtrack is creepy as fuck. And the gameplay is challenging, yet satisfactory. The Return to Bloody Nights fucking slaps. Nuff said. Ciao.